So you rely heavily on staff reports.
Exactly.
I'm like, I'm not reading that.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes. Oh, we can't hear you. All I heard you was Nicole there. We didn't hear anything else about the meeting starting.
Oh, okay. It must not have caught up when you did your call to order.
Meeting is called to order at 6:01.
There we go.
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay.
All right.
So let's see. I got Councilmember Fenn. Treasurer Janetti.
Present.
Chairman Lemasters.
Here.
Vice Chair Steve Cooley stated he would be absent this evening. Member Marufo also stated he would be absent this evening. Member Vanderpool.
Here.
Member Sanchez.
Here.
Member Garcia.
Here.
Alternate member Damian Butler. And alternate member Caroline Hopkins. All right, that's it.
Thank you. I have the request for excused absence from member Cesar Marufo and Vice Chair Cooley. Are there any other requests?
I have none.
Thank you.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I have a text message from Councilmember Martinez is having internet issues right now.
Understood. Thank you. Treasurer Janetti, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
Yes, sir. Your hand over your heart and repeat. Start. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Treasurer Janetti. Are there any adjustments to tonight's agenda?
I have none.
I hear none. Are there any conflict of interest disclosures from the committee tonight? I hear none. We'll move on to the public comment period. This meeting will be open to the public and conducted in a virtual format to be inclusive of all participation preferences. Public comment participation is encouraged by emailing any comments to the City Clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. There is a 3-minute limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. Please be advised that state law prohibits the committee from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. Are there any requests for comment at this time?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Thank you very much. Action items. First on the agenda, introduction of the new members and alternates. Member Christina Sanchez, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Christina Sanchez. I've been living here in Beaumont. My first stint is 2006 to 2012. Then I moved away. I moved back here recently, Cherry Valley area, 2016, and right here in Beaumont, Oak Valley, about a year and a half ago. My experience is from accounting technician all the way financial analyst through a CFO. I have about 25 plus years of accounting and finance experience in my career. And I think one of the things I wanted to be involved here is for, I attended the Beaumont Police Department Citizens Academy, the first one, and it really wanted me to be a part of my community. So when this opening came up, I was really excited to jump at the opportunity to be involved. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Member Sanchez. Member Dennis Garcia.
Hello, I'm Dennis. Been here in Beaumont for 10 years, business owner. 15 years as a business owner and Same thing, want to get involved with my community, so I'm here. My wife is with me. We have 4 kids, and we love Vermont. So just wanted to be involved more with our community.
Welcome to the committee, Member Garcia.
Thank you.
And alternate member Carolyn Hopkins, please introduce yourself.
She is not on the line.
She is not on the line. Our second item, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Member Vanderpool. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by Treasurer Janetti. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez,
He's on mute.
there he is. I know he was having internet issues. Can you hear us, Mr. Martinez? I'll come back to his vote. Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Lemasters,
Yes.
Member Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
and Member Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Item number 3 on the agenda, FY 2022 General Fund and Wastewater Fund Budget to Actual through November 2021. Staff report, please. Finance Director Jennifer Eustachian.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Committee. I have for you the fiscal year 22 General Fund and Wastewater Fund Budget to Actual through November 21. Starting with the General Fund, we're about 5 months in and we have 3 months of sales tax that's been received. That's trending higher than budget. We have some increased building permit activity from that are over from prior years, with other permitting activity is lower, and that's mostly due to putting some invoices directly against deposits rather than into the actual expenses and revenues. We have a low rate market, which is continuing to keep interest earnings estimated lower than budget. However, we do have funds that have been placed with the trustee for investment with public trust. So we will monitor that as we continue on throughout the year. We have 10 of 26 pay periods that have been reported, and costs are trending lower than budget. We have recruitment costs are trending high, and utilities are trending slightly high, and your contractual services is trending lower than budget. However, the fire services contract has had no payments posted against that yet, and I expect to receive that invoice here within the next week or two. And so the city is 5 months into fiscal year 22 and providing the report of very preliminary estimates, as receipts are normally collected in arrears. Estimate values can change as we record more activity. Property tax is received in January and May, so we really can't determine estimates on that from any type of receipts we've received thus far. 3 months of sales tax received is trending high. Again, that's preliminary because we only have 3 months of receipts. Our building permit activity is trending high, and like I mentioned earlier, we have permit activity decreased due to a change in deposit accounting. Investment income remains lower than budget, but will be monitored. Personnel costs are trending to have a savings. However, our recruitment is trending high. On August 3rd, City Council approved a budget amendment for unspent prior year appropriations and reappropriated $214,799 for fiscal year 22. This still leaves City Council with $741,845 of available funds for appropriation throughout the fiscal year. And once City Council appropriates these funds, they will be reflected in the appropriate expenditure categories and will reduce any estimated surplus balance. Now moving on to our wastewater fund. It's 2 of 6 utility billings have been recorded thus far. And now our billings are every other month for those new members, just to let you know. So you'll have 6 total for the fiscal year. And again, for investment earnings, we're in a low rate market. So again, we're going to continue monitoring that now with our investments placed with public trust. We're again, 10 of 26 pay periods are recorded and the costs are trending lower than budget. Fuel costs are trending higher than budget. Our supplies are trending lower than budget, and we have 1 of 2 debt service payments that have been recorded. And based on our year-end projections, the wastewater fund is trying to have approximately $424,000 to be retained for utility reserves for fiscal year 22. And this is driven by savings in both personnel and operating costs and a slight increase of revenues. And with that, that's my report, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Eustachian. First, are there any public comments on this?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
All right, we'll throw it open for committee discussion. Are there any questions from members of the committee at this time? I see and hear none. Is there a motion to receive and file the attached report?
I move that we receive and file the attached financial report. as
Motion
presented.
by Treasurer Janetti. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember
have it.
Fenn.
I'll let Vanderpool have it.
Oh, thank you.
Second by Member Vanderpool. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez?
Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes, sir, we can. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti?
Yes.
Chairman the Masters?
Yes.
Member Vanderpool?
Yes.
Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Member Garcia?
Yes.
The motion carries. Item number 4 on the agenda, Financial Training Subcommittee Presentation. Staff report, again, Finance Director Jennifer Eustachian.
Yes, thank you. The City Council directed the Finance and Audit Committee with creating a subcommittee to create a financial training program for the general public. The subcommittee met multiple times and has completed a presentation for Finance and Audit Committee's review. And Mr. Vanderpool, did you want to take this over?
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk about the first half. This was a team deal here, and I worked pretty hard on the first half, and I really enjoyed participating in it, especially since I learned a lot from just doing the research from the presentation. So I think we kind of designed this presentation with keeping in mind somebody who's reasonably educated and wants to get more educated about local government finance, particularly how Beaumont manages its finances. So basically, when we made this, we started off with why does the city of Beaumont collect taxes and fees? Then we moved on to
Share my screen. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. All right. And then who pays for those? So kind of the why, and then who pays for them, and then we get kind of a little bit more into the nitty gritty of the 3 major operating funds. So if people want to know, where the money is going, in a very basic way, they can take a look at those 3 funds and what they do, how the money is being used and spent. Then we talked a little bit, we educate them a little bit about CFD funds, then capital funds. So it's just basically talking about the different funds. So when they look at the data, they kind of know what they're looking at in terms of the funds that the money is going into. And then Jennifer, if you want to take a look and do the audits, that would be great.
Yeah, so we just put some basic, information in here on why, how the city is held accountable and audits. That it's, it's an outside firm who comes in and does an audit. It's not city staff. It's a certified public accountants and follows professional standards. What the audits do, so, they occur every year, examine financial records, review agreements and contracts, test internal controls and processes, and interview leadership and staff. The different opinions that you can get from an audit, we've listed them here. We've also gone into what is provided in the financial statements. So there's different sections within a financial statement and what each of those sections are and what they can find. Notes. So notes are very valuable to the public, and what the notes in the financial statements are and what they mean. What is an audit finding? So that someone can be clear exactly what that is. And it's just, it identifies an area where the city needs to improve. And then where they can find the city's most recent audits. And so that directs them to our website and who to contact if there's any questions. And of course, they can always contact the finance department. And that's the end of our training, of our slideshow.
And I know I ran the slideshow by a few people, like my wife, a couple of my students in my AP classes and stuff like that, just to kind of see what they thought of it and if they understood it. and they seem to, they're reasonably especially my wife definitely understood more of it than my AP students. I can tell you that much. But nevertheless, it was. It seemed to me like it was I had to do a little bit more explaining there. But nevertheless, it seemed to be, especially with my wife, she seemed to understand it. She seemed to learn a lot from it. And I think somebody that wants to know more about the city's finances can start here, get the basics done, and then look a little more into research a little bit more if they feel that's something they want to do. But overall, in my opinion, I thought it was a pretty good presentation.
Thank you, Member Vanderpool, and thank you, Director Eustachian. Are there any public comments at this time?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do you have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Yes, Treasurer Janetti.
Let Mr. Fenn go first. He had his hand up first, and let me hear what he has to say so we aren't redundant.
Councilmember
All right,
Fenn.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Two things. One, just a quick question. This will be posted on the website for the public to be able to easily access, correct?
Yeah, that was our understanding that this would go on the website. Mhm.
Okay, so then could I offer a suggestion? On the final page, it says, who do I contact if I have further questions? Can we have a link to the pages for the Finance and Audit Committee meetings and the City Council meetings? So if somebody wants to get involved, they can easily find, if they're just digging into it, and it's also just as an enticement for them to get involved at the same time. So it might be easy to find either way, but just that extra link I think would be nice. It's encouraging them to attend our meetings, get involved. We can hear their voice and so forth.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Thanks. That's all I had.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Fenn. Treasurer Janetti.
Yeah, my first question was, I wasn't sure if this was an outline of the training program or it is the actual slides.
These are the actual slides.
Okay. I wonder if they're self-explanatory in themselves. As I went through them and looked at them, I kind of know where they are. So I'm wondering, I don't want to make this a voluminous thing and, arduous that you have to take hours to go through it. But I don't know if some of the terminology may be understood from a definition standpoint, and in the statements you make, if they have enough meaning. I love what's here. I think it's really good. I would also like to say that I was wondering, I missed it. Was there anything about our budgeting process and capital expenditure process? Because people like to know about that, what's in the budget. And we have two budgets, and then capital expenditures, because I get asked by a lot of people where I live about the expenditures for road repair, Pennsylvania Avenue, Highland Springs, and so forth. So I'm curious about that. And they're kind of my comments. Good job.
Thank you. So that definitely, I like that idea as well. As far as, the people that I've talked to, my wife is, she has a bachelor's degree. She's not particularly into finance or anything like that. And she was able to take a look at it and be reasonably well educated about the city's finances. I know, I went over with my students as well, and they, like I said, it took a little bit more convincing, but then again, they are, high school seniors. So that took a little bit more explanation. I don't know. What are your, oh, go ahead.
Well, here's my thought. Mm-hmm. The slide by itself would be very difficult if I took a bright high school student, your AP student, right, and they had a lot of questions. You were live with them. I'm wondering if we may not want to make this where somebody presents these slides. We make encapsulate a YouTube type thing that we can attach to the website so that you can walk them through each of the slides. There's not going to be a chance for Q&A. So the thing is, I would say in preparation for that is you'd present this thing and I could see where I would have some questions and then you'd be able to put that into the presentation. I just think by itself, standalone, it doesn't do it. From my standpoint, from what we are looking for, I think the outline covers it in a nice, succinct way.
No, that's a good point. I think one idea I did possibly have, that's something Jennifer would want to do, is we could make like a screencast-o-matic where you actually talk over the presentation. And then it would be an actual video, and then we could have the video along with the slides themselves. I usually will provide the video to my students and then the slides themselves, and that usually educates, that does a good job educating them. I don't know if Jennifer, if you'd be would want to do something like that. I think I like that idea. I think it's a good idea. What are your thoughts, Jennifer?
Yeah, I can work on that with you.
Okay. Yeah. And that will allow them, that's a good point, because even when I was going over it with people, I was there to actually answer the questions. And if somebody was looking purely at the slides, that I could see how that could be, that could create questions. Now, as far as the capital expenditure process, Jennifer will talk to you a little bit more about that, just get a little bit more educated about that myself, I think, so we can talk about that a little bit. And then those links, I think, are a great idea. So I think we can make some adjustments here. Seems good to me.
Yeah, and Jennifer and David, when you meet, I have a lot of ideas. I have a little training background. So when you get together, I can meet with you at that time too.
Okay, sounds good.
There is a raised hand from Councilmember Martinez.
Hello. Yes. So just my couple of comments. So when I first saw it, the first thing I thought about is I do presentations to different community groups around the city. And the first thing I thought is this would be great for when I do those little talks, we pull up the PowerPoint and discuss it and kind of go through it a little bit. And I like how you have the link to the audits, because I just turned it on, and the link's to all of the audits, so you can go and click onto those and it'll be with this information. But as I was thinking about that, the same idea came to my mind about the screencastify type idea, is that if you had somebody going through it and explaining it on a little video, then they can kind of go over those little points. And then that can be like the basic video. And then the second part of the video, if they want to continue to watch it, could be just here's an audit, and then just kind of point out, here's where you would find the opinion, here you'd find the notes, here's where you would find that. And then you kind of point out to that on the actual statement without going through the whole, statement and covering it all. You just kind of show them where the points are. Because if you don't do that and you go to the statements and you try to find this stuff, good luck. Because you know how it is, hundreds of pages going through. So that, I think, will add to that. And it could be a 2-part video. It could be a basic intro. And then if you want to, study one a little closer, they have those options. But I think you're on the right track. I love it. And I think it's very useful, and it's adaptable. I could use it as I talk. Person can look at it and kind of go for themselves, or they have the option of watching a video type thing to explain it as well. So I think this really hit the mark. Now we just have to adapt it to those things. So I think it's good as well.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, so Jennifer, I'll be in contact with you, and we'll figure out how we want to make those videos. I do definitely think that would enhance people's understanding of the material, which is good.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions on this presentation? I do not hear any. At this time, I don't think there is a vote necessary because we have some requests for changes. Would that be a correct assumption, Nicole? Do we need to take a vote to send it back?
I'll send it to Jennifer for your opinion. Do you want an approval on this, or do you want to do some tweaks and bring it back, or?
Yeah, we'll do our tweaks and bring it back. We got our direction.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Item number 5, City of Beaumont Grant Policies and Procedures. Staff report, please, from Economic Development Manager Kyle Warzinski.
Good evening. Good evening, committee chair, members of the committee. I'm a new face, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself briefly. My name is Kyle Warzinski. I'm the city's Economic Development Manager, and I am presenting you tonight our first draft of our city's grant policies and procedures. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. And then you all let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, well, at least I haven't failed yet, so we're going to continue. So the purpose of the grant policies and procedures is to, 1, ensure proper oversight of all funds awarded to the city, also to minimize risk of losing funding due to non-compliance with grant requirements. To ensure proper administration and accounting of all grants. So the scope is that this policy would apply to any Beaumont program, department, or fund division, preparation and submittal of grant applications for funds, materials, and equipment. So pretty much across the gamut of different grant funding opportunities that we would be going for. Goals and objectives of the city department should be established early through the planning process and should not change based on new grant availability. So what that really means is that we should have goals and objectives within each city department following the city council's vision and policies that's set forth. And if we see grant availability, then we go ahead and see if those things line up with the goals and objectives of the departments. Maybe not go for grant opportunities to create a new program or a new goal that we haven't vetted yet with the city council, if that makes sense. If grant policies and regulations conflict with the city policies, state or federal regulations shall prevail unless they're less restrictive, where city policies shall prevail at that point in time. So the policies have been broken up into really 11 different categories, and I'm going to go through these quickly. So first, essential responsibility, and the Administrative Services Department will serve as the department responsible for all management of all grants. Well, let me move this thing out of the way. There we go. We're going to maintain a backup file to facilitate management, monitoring, reporting assistance. A central grant file shall be maintained by the department seeking the individual grant funds that submits the application. The finance department will assist in minimizing the city's risk for noncompliance, and finance will aid individual departments on federal grants to ensure compliance with OMB, or the Federal Office of Management and Budget. And please feel free, committee members and committee chair, to stop me at any point during this presentation. If you have something you'd like to ask or an informational tidbit you'd like to share, please go ahead. I don't need to go through this word for word all by myself. So application procedures, applications to be completed by each department seeking the funds, materials, equipment, etc. Complete financial assessment is required prior to the application being submitted. So initial and ongoing costs, which include but are not limited to staff support, computer systems, office space, furniture, utility needs, equipment, supplies, other indirect costs. The way we are trying to do this is through the grant processing request form and a separate technology service request form. So this is the draft of the grant processing request form. You can see how it's laid out, fairly simple, but it does require the individual departments to fill this out in its entirety. So you have the date, the department, which grant program you're looking for, the granting entity, so that would be the grantor, entity contact if any is available, as well as the phone number. And if it's a federal grant, the CFDA number. Oftentimes that number is found on the notice of availability for each grant or funding opportunity. The program title, really completing the funding requests. So you can see here there's multiple gamuts of different funding availabilities. So if it's all federal, then you would fill it out in the federal section. Many different grant opportunities require local matching. So the local match would be where you would put what the local match requirement would be. Notice it says local match is required. Are funds available in the department budget? And as you, as the Finance and Audit Committee, are very well known, sometimes we'll have those available funds that are budgeted at the prior start of the fiscal year, or sometimes maybe not, which may require a subsequent budget adjustment in order to have those local match funds allocated and available in the event the grant is fulfilled and awarded. Accounting in terms of where the match would be coming from. Indirect cost, reimbursable grant, that really helps the finance department understand if we're going to be out of pocket up front for those costs as we're paying, and then we would be reimbursed by the granting entity, or if we're going to be receiving a lump sum of those grant funds up front, and then we'll be able to expend those throughout the life of the grant program. Has the project director, who is the person preparing and ultimately submitting the grant, their phone number, email. Has the department director of that individual, if it's not the same person, with their signature reviewed and approved by finance. Finally, to be reviewed and approved by the city manager. All 3 signature blocks will need to be taken care of and approved before the individual department can submit for that grant. So moving on, the technology service request form is if there are computers or computer systems, software, et cetera, that are going to be applied for through those grants. We want the departments to be able to list those items and have the IT department and city administration review those and ensure that if we're buying a new computer, it has the certain Windows that every other computer in the city has, right? It doesn't have Windows 95 or Windows 2000 or something like that. So make sure that all of the equipment and software packages are in sync with the current city's operations. So I kind of talked about that. If grant application is denied, copy of the denial will be placed in the master file and summary shall be drafted in order to understand the reasons for the denial. Acceptance procedures. So say we do all of that fun stuff and we get it, right? So grant award letter, acceptance agreement provided to admin services, includes the grant amount, assurances, conditions, guidelines, and deadlines. Finance department will establish a budget appropriation, create an account code, and if needed, reimbursable grant procedures, notification to administrative services department and finance department if subsequent alteration in funding. So if the grant program comes back and says, hey, we promised you $200,000, but something happened, we can only give you $100,000. Doesn't happen quite often, but we want to have the policies flexible enough that it covers those unique circumstances. Subsequent alteration in city's obligations. So if those matching funds are not there, not available, we want to know about that. Grants to be carried into the next fiscal year. So things that cross different fiscal years, and then notification of a grant will be terminated. So I talked a little bit about these, so I wanted to go ahead and define them. So there will be a master file, which is the file to be kept by the department program manager that's completing the application, submitting the application, hopefully receiving an award of that grant, and then managing the reporting requirements, expenditures, and so forth. The fiscal file to be kept by administrative services department. And as the finance director and the admin services director have spoken, oftentimes the fiscal file is obviously going to be available, if not mirrored, on the finance department's computers as well as admin service staff. So we'll kind of both have it. Grant files must be retained in accordance with City of Beaumont's file retention policy for federal awards and retention requirements. per the code, whichever is more restrictive. So as each individual grant comes through, we'll go ahead and check that and make sure we understand the retention obligations related to each individual grant. So for monitoring reporting, departments responsible for continuous monitoring of grants that have been awarded. Finance department will provide departments monthly financial reports. Those will include, but are not limited to, the funds expended, remaining funding available, budget to actual analyses, payments received, grant receivable or advance payments, and matching fund totals. And departments shall notify admin services and finance promptly on discrepancies. So not only is the department that's managing the grant and going through and paying for said things through that grant, tracking their expenses, but they're going to be receiving monthly updates from finance. And ideally, they'll look at both their internal tracking and finances report, and everything should match up. But maybe it doesn't, and then we'll start being able to look at and truing up those things on a monthly basis. So line item budget amendments must be approved prior to grant expenditures being made. This must be done in accordance with the awarding agency's policies and procedures. These do vary from grantor to grantor, so departments need to monitor that, as well as monitor the grants for compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local regulations. A good example of that is equipment purchased with grant funds must be disposed of in accordance with that terms of the grant. I know there's definitely special requirements and regulations related to equipment or vehicles purchased with federal grants. I won't get into that now, but I do know they're out there, so we decided to cover that in the grant policy. We also added this one, which is departments shall require subrecipients of grant funds to submit progress reports in order to make sure that the subrecipients of grant funds are demonstrating compliance to the applicable regulations and requirements.
Quick question, Mr. Warzinski.
Yes.
So this, when you say subrecipients, that would be someone who receives the funds from the city, is that correct?
That is correct.
So the city receives the funds, and then a person on the outside of the city is given that fund to accomplish something.
Exactly. It could be a contractor. It could be a different group that worked with us for that grant and benefits from the grant, but we are the grantee, if you will, as the city. So we wanted to make sure that those subrecipients are well aware of the requirements that we're basically on the hook to report.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Kyle, this is Barry Giannetti.
Yes.
Kyle, I have a question. I think it's here, but I just want to make sure it's clear. Who has the overall oversight of this process to make sure that the department is doing it right? I see finance looking at the finances and the department going to reconcile, but who's sitting back and looking down on the multiple grants that we could have in play at any one time, and making sure that all of them are adhering to what the grant's supposed to deliver and on the appropriate timeline?
Of course. And that's a very good question. And I'm glad you brought that up. So the responsibility really sits with each of the individual departments, right? But the concept of having the fiscal file in the hands of administrative services and will allow the admin services department to create a master spreadsheet of all the grants that are occurring at the same time. And on that spreadsheet, it's going to have all of the different funding amounts, the deadlines for those reportings, the terms of those grants, whether it's a year, 6 months, 3 years, and allow admin services to really watch as that in a management role to ensure that things are going on. And that department will have the items in each of the files in case we need to go in and look at those types of things. And obviously, if something's happening, we'll be opening dialogue with those individual departments. I don't think that will be necessary. I have great confidence in my colleagues across departments that have worked on grants their entire careers, that they'll keep on top of this, but it does add another layer of oversight. And then ultimately the city manager can take a look at those and manages and provides oversight to the administrative services department as well. So there'll be multiple levels.
Good. Thank you, Kyle. That seemed to be important. I realize other departments and the people I've met are very reliable and very good at their jobs, but there's somebody looking at the big picture and making sure that we're hitting deadlines, doing the appropriate thing with grant money and so forth. Thank you.
Yes. So departments shall be responsible for complying with all due dates and requirements specified in each grant. Reimbursement requests shall be timely to maximize the financial benefits and grants to the city. Really put that in there so that you don't end up losing funds because a reimbursement request comes in after the deadline. And then the analysis performed at the onset of the grant application process nets a certain benefit to the city, right? And if we miss that deadline for reimbursement and we're not able to receive some of those dollars that we had ran that analysis on, well, maybe the cost benefit analysis is skewed. So we're making sure that those requests are timely. So indirect costs, go into that just a little bit. So some grants do allow for indirect costs to be funded through grant programs. Departments shall work with finance to identify and calculate various indirect costs for inclusion into a grant. Those do include staff time, external auditor expenses, and so forth. So personnel, this was a big one that we focused on. So some grants buy things and some grants fund people, right? But not all grants last forever. And in my experience, people last way longer than grants do. So a staffing plan shall be submitted to the Administrative Services Department for new positions to be funded by a grant. And those include the duration. So if it's a 1-year grant and we need a 1-year temporary position, that would be identified and detailed, or if it's a 1-year grant and that person would fulfill the needs of that grant program for the year, and then the department envisions keeping that person on and fulfilling different duties in year 2, 3, and 4th, then they will explain that as well in terms of work details, how the funding will, or how the position will be funded upon expiration of the grant. Any new personnel positions to be created must be approved by the city manager and city council. Departments must notify human resources and payroll prior to the start of the fiscal year of coding changes for those persons being charged to grants. So procurement, different requisitions using grant funds should clearly indicate the pertinent account code for the grant that's established when we receive the grant. Department head or program manager must communicate the applicable procurement standards for the grant to finance, along with the purchase requisition. Special attention is required for federal grants, which have detailed and lengthy procurement policies. In some cases, Beaumont's procurement standards may be more restrictive and thus must be followed by the program manager. Those typically happen as we have different procurement policies that have been placed by our city council with lower dollar amount thresholds than the federal government has. So the federal government say, hey, you just need a couple bids, where our procurement policy at the city of Beaumont may require a formal bid. So we just need to make sure that we're tracking those. So classification of grant revenues, received as revenue as opposed to expenditure refunds to remain in compliance with GAAP. So year-end procedures, June and July invoices shall clearly indicate which fiscal year, prior or current, they are to be posted. Only goods and services received prior to July 1st can be posted back to the prior year. Program managers shall ensure all funds are expended or encumbered prior to the end of the grant period. And you and the Finance and Audit Committee obviously know the importance of that. A grant is completed when all work funded by the grant is complete or the grant period of performance ends. Work cannot be completed in the specified period. The program manager is responsible for requesting a continuation or no cost extension. Adherence to grant specific closeout requirements, which may include final reports and final payment requests. To ensure accuracy, the program manager must obtain a final grant recap report from the finance department prior to completing the final report and final payment request. And those final reports and final payment request need to be signed by the appropriate department head prior to their submittal. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing screen if I can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Warzinski.
I can also bring that back up if any of you have any additional questions on those slides. And that concludes my report. I do have a recommended action, which is to discuss and recommend that the city council recommend to the city council that they approve the proposed City of Beaumont grant policies and procedures. And I can answer any questions, and I'm sure the finance director, Ms. Eustachian, can help me out as well.
Thank you, Mr. Warzinski. Clerk, are there any public comments at this time?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Yes, Councilmember David Fenn.
Yes, thank you. This might be for Kyle and Jennifer, whoever can answer that. It's okay. How is the city notified of available grants? And if we're not notified, how does the city go about finding out what's available? And then in your opinion, what is there room for improvement? What could city staff do to get better at digging for those funds?
Of course.
I'd like to see that if something come to the council, if there's something that we can approve to help move that forward, because, you know, there's money out there. How do we find it and how do we put ourselves in the best position for it?
Yes, sir. So the multiple options are available to us that we basically utilize at this point in time. Number one is our city's lobbyist. Townsend Public Affairs does provide the city a list of grant opportunities. And because they represent us at the state and federal level, they're not just giving us one or the other. So they do provide us a notice of funding and a grant related table that has all available grants that they're aware of to us. And we look through that. That report does get dispersed to each individual department. They look at them, match up their goals and objectives with those funding availabilities, and then proceed. WRCOG also provides a very similar, but sometimes different funding availability. So I would say for the most part, Townsend's and WRCOG's mirror a lot of the different funding availabilities, but once in a while, WRCOG will have more than one that are not on the lobbyists and vice versa. And then other funding opportunities, individual departments are oftentimes signed up with their local professions and their trades. So I can speak for myself. I'm a member of CalEd, which is California Economic Developers, as well as the International Economic Development Council. They will send out notices of funding availability through often third parties that are private that we may not hit through WRCOG or through the lobbyist because they're focusing on government funding. You can also sign up for the state stuff. And I believe my colleagues in other departments that are members of professional organizations have very similar notification protocols in place. So I think that I may be missing some, and Jennifer, you can feel free to jump in, but that's really the gamut that we currently have at our disposal that we utilize.
Yeah, I think you pretty much caught all of it, Kyle. Maybe other agencies too will send out notifications and things like that.
Okay, thanks. And then just one other question. When it comes to grant writing, do we have staff that you can usually meet those needs, or do those often have to get contracted out?
In my experience, our staff has been able to fulfill most, if not all, grant applications that I've seen come across in the past. There have been some unique scenarios in which we'll use some consultants for some of the really big ones that require technical analysis and graphs and so forth. But for the most part, our individual department heads and their staff have been very good and successful at writing their own grant applications.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Fenn. I see a hand raised by Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of questions. So just to comment quickly on Councilmember Fenn, we have had Townsend in the past do grant writing for us, and we have contracted out before. But as we got more and more staff that was qualified that did that, we found that we saved quite a bit, and they have been doing quite a bit and been successful at it. So we've been kind of keeping with that route, one to save costs on that, but it's been successful with our own personnel. So just to comment on that. But the questions I have for you, Kyle, is number one, is there anything here that is new or modified from existing procedures that we were already in practice? Or is this pretty much what we've been doing, but just kind of consolidated and outlined it so it looks clean and written up? Or is there something that's in here that we hadn't done before that we put in here that's
Sure.
new?
And I appreciate that question. Jennifer, you can stop me when I misspeak, but when we started this process, we looked at the current grant policy, and it was very light, maybe a page at most, and it wasn't really I don't want to say adequate, but it wasn't intended to be the city's grant policy. It was intended for a different finance aspect, for a different goal. So we basically started from scratch. We used the city's policies that we have in place and really built on those, pulling from a multitude of other locations as well as professional organizations to really cover everything that we could think of and that we envisioned that we would need. So we had stuff that was going on that mirrors these types of things, but nothing this formal, that also nothing that the city manager would need to look at with a full-blown analysis before we would submit. And then no other department oversight from a grant perspective.
Well, I appreciate that because I know one thing we lack in is procedures from the past. You know, things weren't well documented and written. So I appreciate that. And I was curious because I do approve of this. This is well done. And I think the scope and everything's there spelled out. I think it's what we need. And I love how it just has all the accountability on there. So I really enjoyed this. My next question is, are the department heads actively instructed to look for grants? Because I know we have it posted, we know where to find them. I know they, you know, if something comes our way, it's kind of a word of mouth, but is it a policy within our admin to say, hey, make sure you're going out and looking for grants? Or have you looked at, is there any follow-up on that? Or is it just kind of left up to the professionalism of each department head?
I believe so. I believe that when those funding availabilities are received by the city, they are distributed to each department head and they look through those and then really get involved on it. I also take a look at the different opportunities that I see, and I'll peruse them because I'm definitely not an expert in other departments. We could use the police department for an example. I may see a program that I think is amazing, and I'll meet with the deputy chief or the police chief or one of the lieutenants, and they're like, no, we look into this and X, Y, and Z is wrong, or it costs us more than we actually benefit. So I try my best to get the word out there to the individual departments on things I think might be of interest, and I allow them to use their professional judgment to review that list and then really see what meets our current goals and objectives.
And other departments too are actively looking at that. And there's communication that goes back and forth within the city that will, share that information if something's found from one department to another.
Okay, because I usually hear a lot of, lately we've been hearing a lot of info about grants from different departments. So, I know people are actively working at it. I just didn't know if it was something that admin has been instructed to make sure that you supplement. There's one thing we always do as the council is to look for other ways of funding things. It saves the taxpayer, if we can get a grant in for something. And the police department's been doing an awesome job at doing a lot of their supplemental funding off of grants. So we just want to make sure that our departments are actively involved. And it looks like there's a checks and balances going on. Whereas Kyle might find something, they'll let them know. They'll tell him, they'll tell him that they already looked into that, or they may not have known. So as long as that communication is going on, I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I just want to applaud you for that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Martinez. I saw a hand raised from Treasurer Janetti.
You're on
Barry,
mute.
you're on mute. You're still muted.
Okay, yep.
There you go.
Want to do it. Excuse me. It was about 2 years ago, we did have a presentation on grants at the city. I can't remember who came in and gave us an overview and all. It was very informative. And there's a question that Mr. Fenn asked that we did too, about are there more opportunities for us? And I remember very loud and clear, there probably are, but the departments are prioritizing what they can handle. It's a matter of, you could write up all these grants, but do you have enough people to handle it? And I remember Mr. Parton told us that. He said, there's only so many people to be able to manage these projects. So I feel with this process that Kyle went over tonight, it's really good. It's really buttoned down tight. And I'm sure the groups from my past experience are doing their best to get us the grants.
Thank you, Treasurer Janetti. Are there any other comments or questions at this time?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So, it looks like a great process, and sounds like a lot of this stuff is done interdepartmentally and such. But if you are a member of the general public and you wanted to find out what was going on with these grants, I am interested about how they would go about doing that.
Sure. I think that having the access to that fiscal file and those master files are important. They should be done electronically. I guess a department might be able to do it on paper, may choose to do it on paper. But the way this policy requires it, they do need to provide a copy over to administrative services. And I think it would be our intention to have those done electronically. So, if a member of the public wanted to review that file in any way, I don't think there should be an issue with that unless it's some level of confidential, but I don't think so. And then we would be creating that master spreadsheet that's tracking all of the grants that have been applied for and have been awarded. Mm-hmm. And they would have access to that master file as well. Obviously, it would be locked, but yeah.
Right, sure. Yes. So they would just call up your department or call up a particular department of the city. Is it online? Is there anything like that? I'm just interested.
I think we would have them submit a record request. If someone calls me and they want to look at it, that's perfectly fine. We can navigate those waters. If they submit a formal request through the clerk's office, we could get together on that. I don't know if there's value in posting those online just because they're living documents.
Sure.
So but if council would like us to do that, I'm sure I could figure out a way to do that. But at this point in time, we're thinking of keeping it at least electronically and then updating it periodically, open to people that would like to look at it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as a member of the general public. If I was interested in that, I'd contact you and you could get me to where I wanted to go. I just was interested in finding out a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vanderpool. Are there any other questions or comments?
That's a comment.
Yes, Member Sanchez.
I think having dealt with grants, I find this document very detailed and really capturing all the nuances that happen with grants, which is fantastic. And also just really making sure that all departments involved are notified and aware before the grant is approved is very important. And so I see that all captured here. So this is an awesome document. Like, this is excellent and very detailed.
Thank you, Member Sanchez. Are there any other questions or comments?
I move that we recommend this to go forward to the city council for their approval.
Motion by Treasurer Janetti. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Fenn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman the Masters,
Yes.
Member Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Garcia.
Yes.
The motion carries. Item number 6 on the agenda, review of draft FY 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Staff report, please, from Finance Director Jennifer Eustachian.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to be presenting this with Lisa Leach. She's our Assistant Finance Director. And let me pull up a presentation I have ready for you. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so first I want to start off that this is a draft, but this is our fiscal year 2021 draft annual comprehensive financial report. And so this is the first ACFR, so it's ACFR for the city of Beaumont. It provides a broader view of the city's financial position. Before, we just had our basic financial statements, and so now we're expanding upon that. And that's because the city is continually working on providing a reporting process that increases transparency. And so there's 3 sections that are part of the ACFR, which is your introductory section, your financial section, and your statistical section. And your introductory section, which is new to the ACFR. So that's something that you would not have prior in your basic financial statements, but you have a letter of transmittal, principal officers, and an organizational chart. And your letter of transmittal is prepared by management, and it introduces the ACFR and must include a profile of the government, which is information useful in assessing a government's economic condition and any awards and acknowledgements that they may have received. So in your financial section, you have your independent auditor's report, management's discussion analysis, government-wide financial statements, fund financial statements, notes to the financial statements, required supplementary information, and combining financial statements. And your independent auditor's report provides an opinion on the financials, and RAMS has given a clean opinion. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lisa, and she's going to walk you through the government-wide financial statements.
Thank you, Jennifer. The government-wide financial statements are a broad overview of the city's finances, similar to a private sector business. This statement is long-term focused and is classified by activity. The City of Beaumont's 2 activities is the government activity and the business type activity. Our next slide are the results of the city's statement of net position. The statement of net position consists of city assets, which is what we own, and less city liabilities, which is what we owe. The city's government-wide statement of net position for fiscal year 21 ended at $471,873,000. You'll notice that the numbers are in thousands on this chart for you. And then the overall citywide net position has increased from the prior year by $11.674 million. Our government-wide changes in net position increased for government activities, while you can see the business activities decreased, and this is due to one-time developer contributions in fiscal year 20. I'll pass it back over to Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go over fund financial statements, and the fund accounting used to control resources have been segregated for specific activities or objectives. So these look a little bit different than the government-wide. They're on a near-term focus rather than on the long-term focus. And all funds fall into one of three broad categories. So you have your governmental funds, which are activities related to serving the public. You have your proprietary funds, which are activities with an objective to recover costs through user charges. And you have fiduciary funds, and those are financial resources held for others as trustee. And we have our general fund operating results. The revenues are down from prior year due to a one-time $5 million franchise fee in fiscal year 20. But if you took that out, otherwise there would be an increase in revenue. And expenses have increased with COVID relief programs, as well as normal operational costs increase. And transfers out increased for one-time projects, which resulted in a decrease in fund balance. So in fiscal year 20, you had increase in fund balance of $8.7 million, whereas in fiscal year 21, you have a decrease of $670,940. And the general fund decrease in balance is mostly due to one-time expenditures. And this is a list here of the one-time funds that were used for projects. So you had a transfer to the internal service fund for smart irrigation purchase, and then some transfer to capital projects. So about 3.1 for the 2020 mid-year street enhancement, $2 million for the 2021 mid-year street enhancement, $565,000 for Potrero Fire Station, $500,000 for Cherry Channel Drainage Project, and $250,000 for City Hall landscaping and painting. This gives you an overview of fund balance for the general fund, and your total general fund balance is $23.3 million as of June 30th, 2021. And now total fund balance is broken out by categories. So the different categories is going to tell you if these funds are available or not available. So your non-spendable funds, which are not easily converted to cash, could be receivables. Committed funds have been earmarked by council for specific purposes. And assigned funds are amounts intended to be used by the city for a specific purpose, and that would include reappropriation of funds from prior year. And your unassigned fund balance is what is available for appropriation by council. And just to let you know, our city policy states that 25% of annual expenditures are to be held in reserves. And for fiscal year 22, reserve requirement would be about 9.4 million. So of that unassigned fund balance of the 17.5, you'd want to make sure that you held 9.4 for your reserve for your policy. And then along with your ACFR also includes a statistical section, and this is new. And this is provides the past 10 years of data, and that provides users with additional historical perspective to assist in helping them understand context and detail of what's going on with the ACFR. And so that includes financial trends, revenue capacity, debt capacity, demographic and economic information, and operating information. And now there's a lot in this report, but we're really excited. And I'm very appreciative to my staff and all the other departments that have helped to put this together, because it's been a long time coming, and we're excited to put this out. So I'm available for any questions. Lisa's available, and I can pull this back up also if anyone wanted me to show you something specific.
Thank you, Director Eustachian and Assistant Director Leach. Are there any public comments at this time?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Yes, Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I couldn't push the button. Couple of quick questions. So thank you, because when I was reading this, it's like, I haven't seen this before. And I was trying to put it, because I've seen so many reports, you know, it's like, was I supposed to at some point? And come to find out that this is what previous Treasurer Carroll was looking for when she first brought out the idea way back when. So I'm so thankful that we're here at this point. It was a long time coming to get here. I mean, this is exactly what we've been looking for when it comes to transparency. I mean, this report has it all. If you go through the report, it shows you everything from the WRCOG stuff to the different funds. It explains the funds. It really has all the information in there. And I really want to thank you for that, because I learned a little bit from it myself. And I was really thankful to see it, because there were some things that kind of stood out Couple of questions though. On page 75 for note 9, we talk about self-insurance. And I have a question on self-insurance. This is one of those things that I still can't get my mind around. So do we have, because we're self-insured up to $250 for general liability and property damage claims. Do we have a separate account for that $250,000? Or if we ever had to use that, does that just come out of a general fund, or do we have that set aside somewhere?
We have a fund specific to our self-insurance, and now that fund is combined on the financial statements with the general fund. But I have called that balance out, and you're committed. So the committed balance includes that self-insurance fund.
And that's shown on the report, so we can always see what that number is.
It's included in the combined committed
What
balance.
is combined? Okay,
yeah.
but when you're doing your models and estimates, you always account for that 250 in there.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And the alternate for self-insurance would be what?
Actually, I see Ms. Carrie Mendoza is on here. She's Administrative Services Director, and I'm wondering if she might want to answer that question, because she's the one that actually handles all that through her department.
Hey, Carrie, I know you're getting, sorry to, my question had to do with that self-insurance. So I always had a question on that, because to self-insure always gave me a little nervous bit, but it was always told to me that it was better up to $250 to self-insure because we have the higher amount after that. But I wasn't quite sure. I mean, is that the best approach in our opinion, or should we start thinking about other things at this point? And this may be a question maybe for council. I don't know if that's appropriate here, but I was just reading the report and it came out into my mind.
Yeah, well, it's pretty standard in some of the insurance pools that I've looked at the last couple of years that you're self-insured to a certain retention level. Whether you look at, we're part of ERMAC, or if you look at PERMA or any of those, it does seem pretty standard. Different cities have different self-insurance retention levels. Some it's lower, some it's higher. We've looked at just trying to get like a blanket insurance coverage. The insurance market is so volatile right now. That's a pretty interesting concept and so expensive. Last we looked at it, we did like a 360 review about 2 years ago and still found that we were getting the best bang for our buck, if you will, in the pool that we're in.
Okay, that kind of, because that's kind of what I heard back then. I didn't know if that had changed by now. So that answers it.
Yeah,
right.
No, unfortunately, we looked at adding like employment practice layers and a couple different things, and even legal advised against that. And that was just in the last 12 months. So no, we keep exploring and looking at options every year. But it does seem the most common, I'll say, in government agencies.
Okay, and that was my next question: is other public agencies doing this? So it sounds like yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And my last question there, Jennifer, had to do with note 13, had to do with WRCOG. Are we heading into the second 5-year cycle of WRCOG now? Because I know we go every 5 years, and I know we're at the introductory because we get that 100% on the TUMP fees. Is it the 2022 that we're going to be going into the second 5-year cycle? Do you know?
Lisa, you know where we're at with that? Are we in that 5th year cycle right now? I want to say it was going to be in the next year, but I will double check on that.
Yeah, we'll have to double check. I don't remember that off
The
the
only
top of my head.
The only reason I ask is because it goes down to 75% now instead of 100% in the TUMP. And I just wanted to know, is that something that, of course, we're obviously going to take into account in our budgeting as well?
Correct.
Forward. Okay.
Correct.
All right, then. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee? I see no hands raised. I do have one quick question, just seeing that this is a draft. May I assume, Jennifer, that we'll be seeing a final version prior to that being moved on to council?
So we are not expecting any substantive changes with this draft to the final. We are looking to put this through to the GFOA for the Ward Next list and financial reporting. There is a deadline on that. So we are asking that the recommendation to for Finance Committee is to move this forward to council once it's in its final form to be able to apply for that award.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to this effect?
I so move.
Moved by Councilmember Martinez. Is there a second?
I'll
Oh,
second.
second.
Seconded by Treasurer Janetti. It was by a hair. Nicely done.
Exactly.
Clerk, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Lemasters,
Yes.
Member Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Member Garcia.
Yes.
The motion carries.
And Chair LeMasters, as per my email, it's that time for me, so I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Have a very happy holiday season.
Thank you, people. I
Take
have to
care.
check out a little early. We'll see.
Next item on the agenda is subcommittee updates, and we'll start with the Internal Control Subcommittee. Are there any updates from the members at this time?
Yes, there is a slight update. As I mentioned before, we kind of closed out the internal audit issues that we had, and we were very satisfied that everything that was planned and scheduled as far as processes to make the improvements there had been done. We did discover one issue that potentially could have produced some conflict of interest, which has been rectified in the situation. And as a result of that, Mr. Parton has decided to change add an addition to the current personnel policy. And it had to do with an employee that was working for the city who also owned another company and was doing that work at home. It was all legitimate. Everything was fine. The paperwork was there, but this is something that is not accepted by the state of California or the federal government. Like I said, that has been cleared up. Everything else is being adhered. And Mr. Parton said that from now on, there will be no city employee hired for any other additional work. So we feel very good about that process and everything. That's where we are.
Thank you, Treasurer Janetti. Financial Training Committee, are there any reports other than the presentation that we saw earlier?
Oh, I'll take that. I'm glad. Sounds like we got some really good input here today, and you guys had a lot of great ideas. And I'm looking forward to updating that with a video, and we're looking forward to our, presenting it to you guys in the coming months here.
Thank you, Member Vanderpool. Next committee, CFD Training and FAQ Committee. Are there any updates?
We haven't had a chance to meet yet. And while I've got Mr. Vanderpool on here, Dave, can you get a hold of Todd Parton and find out when you and staff are ready? Because I know he had staff to put together for our next meeting. And then once that's done, then I can probably match your guys' schedule a little easier. So I'd like to know yours and staff's first, if we can do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Fenn. Reserve Policy Committee, do any of the members of this committee have updates? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Calpers Liability Committee. Are there any updates from this committee?
Do we know who's on these committees?
Nicole, do we have any membership information on these?
I didn't bring that list with me. I can try and pull it up while you guys are talking, but it might take me a little bit.
Okay, we can circle back around.
Yeah, because my knowledge, I'm on the Financial Training Committee, and I got on the Bond Accountability one, I believe, if I remember correct.
You are
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
I do have some of the names here, and I can say for CalPERS liability, I'm on that with Cooley and Jennifer Eustachian, the three of us. So we have no update. I think we will do something as we get through the holidays here. Bond accountability, David's right. He's on that with Jennifer and Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You're on that committee. Reserve financial policy, we have on hold, so there shouldn't be any action on that. And long-term financial sustainability is on hold as we prioritize the work with the people we had at the time when we made these assignments. You may want to consider, Mr. Chair, that we might be able to assign this to some of the new folks that have now joined the team.
Yes. Thank you very much, Treasurer Janetti. I will speak for the Bond Accountability Committee. We have not met yet, but we have an initial meeting scheduled for Wednesday, January 5th at 4 p.m. And at that time, we'll discuss how we're going to approach the bond accountability issue and any presentations on that item. I think just to kind of share my insights on it here in this meeting, I think first step is to identify what currently exists around bond accountability, what is in place, making sure that bonds are being paid appropriately and that funds are being put to the appropriate items. But we'll address that in that meeting and update in the Finance and Audit Committee meeting that follows. Is there anything you'd like to add, Member Vanderpool or Director Eustachian?
No.
No, just that we have our first meeting set up and we'll report after.
Very good, thank you. Future agenda items, if I can add on to this, Nicole, maybe perhaps consideration at our next meeting of placing the new members on the Reserve Policy Committee and the Long-Term Financial Sustainability Committee, since those two are on hold. Does anyone else have future agenda items they would like to address at this time? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the meeting review. Treasurer Janetti.
Ooh, wow. We all have about another hour and a half and I can review everything. I'll try to make this simple because one, the financials, we had a good report on our 5-month financials and we look to be tracking well there. The big thing tonight that I see was the financial training program, which I think is an outstanding start, especially getting that down. And I think we have something great to work with. And I didn't realize or thought about it myself when Mr. Martinez said he'd like to take that out and present it. I can see where I would use it too. I get these questions all the time from folks about how this works. What's this? What's this mean? So I think we're right on target with this thing to be able to use on our website and also to be able to carry around to different meetings. Grant policies and procedures, made the recommendation to approve it, and I think
Treasurer Janetti, you are cutting out. We're losing your audio some.
Ooh, you're losing my audio?
Yeah,
As you
turn your head to the right, we're losing you.
Okay, got me?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, on the grant policy, I think a lot of work went into that, and we have a really good process now for everybody to follow. Again, we reviewed the annual comprehensive financial report, our first time ever, and wow, what a report that is! Monumental task. Great work, Jennifer and Lisa and everybody. And the subcommittee updates. I mentioned the internal audit, the one issue we found, and that's been resolved. Financial training we already covered. CFD training, there was no update, but I'm sure Mr. Fenn is going to be getting together there. That'll follow through. And I remember, was it the bond accountability there, Mr. Chair, that you're on?
Yes.
That you have a meeting scheduled? Okay. And otherwise, we're looking to appoint some of the new members to the other two subcommittees. That's it.
Thank you very much, Treasurer Janetti. Next item on the agenda, the Finance Director's comments. Director Eustachian.
Thank you, Chair. So finance is staying busy. We will continue to work on our audit and get that in final form and on to council and apply for the GFOA award and excellence in reporting. That's exciting stuff. We had our department budget kickoff meeting and all departments have received their budget worksheets. So beginning the new year, we're going to get into budget building season and everyone's going to be really busy with that. And we also started work with RCS, our revenue and cost specialist, and that's for the full cost allocation and comprehensive user fee study. So that work has started, and that's an exciting item as well, because that will address one of our audit findings that we have. And that's my comments for the evening. I just want to wish everyone a happy holidays.
Thank you very much, Director Eustachian. Before we move on to adjournment, Clerk, I'd like to check one more time. Are there any public comments?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Very good. The next regular meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee is scheduled for Monday, January 10th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And I would really like to wish all of you a very happy and healthy and safe holiday season. And this meeting is adjourned at 7:25 p.m.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yep, happy holidays, everyone.
Night.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.